Imagine you're climbing up in the Himalayas. You're an elder. You're very, very wise. You're very, very knowledgeable. You have all these years of wisdom and experience. And you feel that it is worthy for you to climb up to the highest peak to gain the spot of being in the honors table, of being one of the top elders, to be an authority in evolutionary astrology. And so, you're at home, you gather your tools, you go to the Himalayas, you start climbing up the mountain, and you keep climbing up and up and up, basking in your wisdom, basking in your knowledge, in your expertise, and everything like that. You're fully aware of your knowledge, of all that you have to give. And then you all of a sudden come across somebody who looks very, very different than yourself. And all of a sudden, certain shadows and blind spots come out. And you offend this person in the worst, most sinful way possible. You continue climbing up the mountain, and you officially reach the top. And when you get to the top of the mountain, when you enter into that place that you are destined to reside in, imagine this is like a futuristic society where the person can contact them through like a certain system or whatever. I don't know how in the Himalayas if the phone system or the internet works up there. I don't know. But this person who was offended contacted the people up at the top, and so what they did, instead of warmly welcoming into his the place after climbing so far up the mountain and feeling so exhausted and so incredibly worn out, feeling really, really worn out, feeling like you just want to rest and you just want peace and calm and to feel grounded and to feel good in your sense of self. To feel like you have worked this hard to climb up the mountain and you get achievement for that, as this is the last task that you're doing on the step to becoming a major authority in the field of evolutionary astrology. And you get to the top, and the people who reside there know about it. And instead of being warmly welcomed into the place, whatever it may be, you get judged, you get disappointed, you get disenchanted, you get told that you were wrong, that you shouldn't have said this to this person, and all these things, and look at how have you negatively affected these people, and you get sent to a dungeon instead of that high seating place. Or you just get plain rejected, and then you have to go all the way back down the mountain to where you began. If you've heard of recent news in the astrology community, in the astrological community, then you probably heard of something happening with a very, very famous evolutionary astrologer, Steven Forrest, and I've shared posts to my Facebook page about it, and I was going to do a natal chart placement, but I couldn't stop thinking about this, and so I just thought, well, the best thing is to address this in a formal video, because it's really, really huge, and it holds a lot of weight with how your ego and how your prejudice of racism can interfere with your own morality, with your own integrity, with your own spiritual evolution. Hence, this person, Steven Forrest, is an evolutionary astrologer. Before I even get into any of this, I'm going to look up what evolutionary astrology even is, so that we get a better understanding of this. So, it's a spiritual approach that views the birth chart as your soul evolving. And everyone, including the evolutionary astrologer's soul, needs to evolve, needs to grow. There's no exceptions to this. There are no exceptions to anyone. Our souls are all worthy of evolving, of growing to the next level, including this person's soul, this person's well-being. And it said that Steven Forrest was one of the pioneers of this. Personal growth. I want you to really, I want you to really consider the themes that I'm talking about here. Personal growth, free will, and healing and karmic patterns. Think about that. Just think about that, those dynamics for a second here. Just think about that. Hold that in your awareness. Personal growth, evolving, releasing your shadows, healing your shadows, transformation. Free will. You have the choice whether to do good or to do bad, to do right or to do wrong in life. You have free will when it comes to your actions, when it comes to the choices that you decide to make, when it comes to what you do, how you do it, when it comes to all that kind of thing like that. That you have the free will with what you decide to say. And no one is exempt from the consequences of their words. And everyone also has freedom of speech. That you have the free will with what you say. What comes out of your mouth, it's up to you. You get to be right. You get to decide your fate. You get to decide where you're going. Can you make the wisest, best choices? So I really want Steven Forrest to really consider that all the themes of what he has done with evolutionary astrology and how that applies to him right here and right now. All that wisdom that you've talked about on videos and books to clients, now it is time for you to embody that wisdom. Now it is time for you to live out that wisdom and put it into practice with taking your own soul, your own psyche, and going through a kind of transformation. You're an evolutionary astrologer, so you should walk your talk. So just thought that I might define that for you. Now, the backstory of this. I'm going to go through the backstory of this negative event and occurrence. I'm going to go through Steven Forrest's astrology and talk about how that plays a role in what happened here. So there was a podcast. It's not there now. It was taken down. But the podcast was the Leela Astrology podcast with Ricky Williams. And Ricky Williams is a former football player turned evolutionary astrologer. And so Steven Forrest was talking a lot in this episode. They spent a lot of time talking about shadow work, and then they went into racism, and he was talking about a lot of what he did in the 1980s with his profession and everything like that. The real issue in this episode was that Steven Forrest dropped the N-word. The N-word. Claiming that, oh, I am friends with this person, so we know each other, and it feels right, and it is right to disclose this to the other person because they know me and we're friends and everything like that. It's not right. I don't care what the context is. I don't care what the situation is. It's not right to use the N-word, period, end of story. It's not right to offend and racially judge and put down races, certain races, for being inferior or less superior to your own. It is wrong to be racially unjust and prejudiced and mean-spirited and having the nerve to say the N-word on a podcast blatantly and bluntly. That should be taken into account. And if you're not looking yourself in the mirror already, you really should look yourself in the mirror because you did wrong. You did very wrong by saying that. Now, naturally, with this episode and everything occurring, the criticisms just started coming in. All kinds of comments from about astrology conferences about things like this started coming with the criticism, everything with his use of the N-word. Now, I have not seen the podcast because I found out about this beginning of August, not necessarily back in July. And this episode was published on the 23rd of July to Spotify and all the places. So, and it was almost like it was mean-spirited, but said in a very, very gentle but insensitive way, claiming, oh, I'm having healing humor by making light of these really, really very destructive and very, very abusive terms. I'm just making healing humor out of it. It's the healing. It's the medicine. What part of, a privileged white person saying the N-word in a very, very offensive way is medicine? So don't pretend to be a talking head of Frankenstein, of which is in the Night of the Museum, and think that you're Einstein to be able to say that. Like, I'm sorry, but no. No. Let's, make that very, very clear. We're the greater, forces that say, no, this is wrong. No, this lacks integrity. This lacks accountability. This lacks goodness and kindness. This is not right. And you should really, really be aware of what you've done that's not right. It's not correct. That's not good. So he did apologize about this in a way on Facebook and Instagram saying, "Oh, don't call me racist, I'm not a racist." Well, you did something and said something that was racist. So how can you saying all these offensive things, how can you say that you're not a racist if you act in these kind of egoic, very, very dark, mean-spirited ways? And you say, "Oh, I'm not a racist." That simply isn't true. That's what he wrote. Well, what if it is true? In fact, maybe it is true that you are a racist and you went there and you went off the deep end and said such an offensive thing, a word that carries a whole history of abuse and trauma and slavery and harm being done, and you dredged it up. You dredged it up from the soil and brought it up, saying, "Oh, I'm bringing up the shadow for you to see." But you're missing the sole, real, vulnerable part of you that is based off of integrity, that's based off of good, that is based off of spiritual kindness, and based off of honesty with your own self, looking your own self in the mirror and saying the right thing with what is authentic. And what isn't authentic is basically being so stuck in your ego that you're not seeing the error of your ways, that you're not seeing how this could potentially harm others, affect others in very, very negative ways, hurt and and I don't want to say traumatize, but marginalize and offend a lot of Black individuals in the astrology community. And the astrology community should be a community that is welcome to everyone of all races, to everyone's race. Because astrology is the language of how we are all the same. Of how we're all different, how we're all unique and special, based off of our own chart, based off of our own transits and planets and signs and house placements and this and that. It shows how we are all unique. And this does include skin color. This does include race. Astrology is a language where astrology is ruled by Aquarius, and in the Age of Aquarius, we are all accepted for who we are. Astrology accepts everyone for who they are. And this astrologer didn't bear that in mind with what he said on this podcast. He forgot that the astrology is ruled by Aquarius, and we're not in the old top-down age of Pisces or Capricornian age anymore. We're not in the old world, we're in the new world. So the world's changing, so change along with it. He said this, and I am not here to defend his words, because that is last century. The newer generations, such as my generation, Gen Z and Gen X, we are more spiritually mature and spiritually evolved than the previous generations, because we will not tolerate racism and injustice. We understand love, acceptance, authenticity, because we want to be authentic to ourselves. And we accept ourselves as we are. Therefore, we accept others as they are. I want to ask you, Steven, what part of you have you not integrated yet, and have you not accepted about yourself? What part of you does not feel worthy enough yet to be able to truly respect others in this kind of way regarding race. The new age is about self-healing, self-trust, all these, self-love, all these kind of things. But it should be. Because if we don't have all of those things, we don't have respect and consideration and acceptance for everybody else. We do not have that kind of thing without the self-love, without the self-recognition, all those kind of things going on. We do not have that if we do not come from ourselves first. It is about being true to ourselves. We feel worthy. We are in our power. We can shine our light. We can be empowered. We can be fully deserving of love and kindness and compassion, and for us to live a life that is authentic to us. Therefore, when we are in our souls, we also respect everyone else's lives being authentic to them. So that is what it means to live in a soul-centered way. And that's what I want to clarify for you right here and now. So just saying, I am racist is just, I am not racist. It simply isn't true. Is you lying and you covering up for your own words and actions that were wrong, that were very wrong, and could be deeply detrimental to your own professional career. Just saying. Don't call me racist. Don't call me sexist. Don't say that I didn't do this really, really bad thing when you know deep down in your heart you did. And you were wrong, and you were in your ego, and you did a callous, mean thing. Don't say that I did that. That's not true. That's what he said in the post that I read. And I saw the picture of him on a, hillside, cloudy skies, that kind of thing. Don't say I didn't do a terrible wrong thing. That simply isn't true. A true friend will be honest with you. A true friend will tell you. And this is from a podcast that I was listening to yesterday about this. A true friend will tell you what you need to hear instead of what you want to hear. Mark my words with that. A true friend will tell you that you were in the wrong. And they care about you. True friends want what is best for you. Want what is better for you. Want what is for your highest good. They want all these things for you. They want you to be well. They want you to be happy. They want you to do good. They want you to be a good, kind, loving person that has a strong moral compass and operates from integrity. They will not tell you, oh, you didn't do anything. Don't worry about it. You weren't in the wrong. You're fine. No, they're going to tell you straight, and they're going to tell you that you were in the wrong. And a true friend, is honest with another person when they've done wrong and has sympathy and compassion through that with honesty, with expecting them and wanting them to be accountable for their actions. And accountability for your actions is a lesson that he is probably currently learning right now. Accountability for your words is a lesson that is probably getting, like sitting down in his house or whatever, getting all these truths just slapped into his face, being faced to, change a part of his identity, transform through all that, and probably feeling the weight of all that he has said and done wrong. And I don't want to completely judge and put down the person. I want to have compassion, but I'm not going to defend anything that was said that was wrong. So, the better thing is to completely take full responsibility and get into your own psyche and your own habit patterns and your own psychology and what drove you to say such a thing. What your beliefs are, what your psychology are. Really, really being honest and being vulnerable and writing out something longer and fuller and more in depth as to why you said what you said. That would have been the right thing to do in this situation. Now, do we really understand that there is really, no context can really, really make it okay to refer to the N-word, to use the N-word? Now, if you don't know Steven Forrest, I do have a couple books by him. And I do have a book called Yesterday's Sky by him, which is a book about the nodes and evolution and all those kind of things, especially talking about the nodes and the North Node through the signs, the North Node through the houses. It's one chapter. There's all kinds of books. The book on Pluto, Finding Wisdom in Darkness, of which he's going through a dark night of the soul right now in a Plutonian experience where he's being asked to deeply transform himself on this kind of level. Pluto, let's talk about Pluto here for a second. Pluto demands that you get honest. Pluto demands that you are honest and transparent about your actions. That you face your shadows. That you do not resist the shadow that's lurking underneath the basement. And the shadow of this astrologer is racism. And so Pluto is inviting him to look at the shadow because it's bringing up the shadow for him to face and move through and work through and evolve from and go through that experience of transformation, of all those kind of things like that, where an old version of you dies away in order for a new version of you to be reborn. Now, he wrote in the monthly astrology column in LA Magazine. Now, the United Astrology Conference, of which he was supposed to be, having workshops at in September, made a statement. He has been removed from having his workshops at the conference. They decided it was best for them to remove because there'd be a lot of judgment and a lot of dislike and anger and resentment toward him if he were to attend that conference, if he were to be in that conference and have his do his thing there and have his workshops there. Now I'm going to get into some astrology that he has going on in his chart right now, and I have to thank Yasmin Bolin for the post being in my feed on Facebook because I saw these aspects from her. So I'm going to discuss the meaning of these aspects and how it ties into how it plays into his own personal natal chart and the situation that he is that he is dealing with right now. So Saturn and the moon are conjunct. So Saturn in Aries is conjunct his moon by a wide aspect, but still. This makes your feelings visible. All your feelings, all your emotions that you've repressed get looked at with reality. All these feelings of injustice and racial inequality are getting looked at with the harshness of reality. And I mean the harshness of reality when you have done wrong. And, karma, what goes around comes around. If you do and say good things out into the world, they will come back to you. Conversely, if you do bad things that you know are wrong, but you do them anyway, then bad will come to you. And the thing is, you're fully conscious of what you're saying and doing, and you know that it's wrong. You don't say, oh, I didn't think it was wrong. Oh, no. You knew, okay? You knew, and you chose to not act with integrity about it. So I don't want to hear that, rationale for that, please. No. Okay? No, I don't need to be in your shoes to be able to tell you that. Where you do things and it comes back to bite you. It is negative karma in your direction because you did this bad deed, and now you're getting the consequences. You reap what you sow. The consequences from your actions coming out of this, and he is reaping those consequences. He grew, I don't know, vines, monstrous vines, and now the vines are just going all over the cities and the towns and growing on everybody and hurting everybody, trapping them, tightening their throats and chest, and not making them free, hurting them in very, very harmful kind of ways, with what is going on here. So, all your feelings are brought to the surface. All your feelings are brought to reality, to the real consequences of what you have done. And consequences doesn't have to be a negative thing. The consequence of working on it is that you have to have a body. The consequence of doing good is that you get something done back. The consequences of hurting somebody is them disliking you, them maybe even hating you now, and them being angry and not moving away from you and wanting to distance themselves from you, and you bring out resentment in those people. Now, this is a time where this particular astrologer is going through deep self-reflection, going into reflection, probably staying in his house or whatever, sitting down, reflecting, finding a way to come out and just apologize and give his whole rationale, probably thinking up a way to put himself out there, and probably afraid to put himself out there now because of all the backlash, of all the hate, of all the dislike. I wouldn't even know how to put myself out there if I was in this situation. And that's probably something that he's deeply considering. How is he going to move forward with this? How is he going to move forward with his career and his profession with this in the air, with this fresh in the air with the astrology community? So, it's about being honest with yourself. It's about being rigorously honest with yourself about where you have done wrong. Choosing to go there. Choosing to face the truth of what you've done wrong. Choosing to face and fess up to what you have said and done that is wrong, and not spiritual bypass. Not bypassing and ignoring the truth based off of your own, blind spots, shadows, beliefs, ego, entitlement, blindness to certain things. Seeing it with conscious awareness, seeing it with full awareness. This is what he's all about, is the soul evolving And your soul needs to evolve at this particular time, right now and right here. Just saying. So, which is about doing what you have, it's about, about coming to terms with and facing and fessing up and being honest about what you have done wrong. And I mean, this can show up in relationships. When you've done a wrong, bad thing, a bad deed, then can you be vulnerable about it? Can you be honest about it? Can you be transparent? Like, okay, I went to meditation, I did my journaling, I did my self-reflection, and I'm coming out in a more clear-headed, right-minded place. I was wrong, I said wrong, I hurt you, I this and that, and I have healed and I have grown, and I look myself in the mirror and see what I have done wrong with truth and kindness and authenticity, and I am choosing to grow, I am choosing to do better, I am choosing to improve myself, I am choosing to look myself in the mirror, face my own stuff, heal, and get to a better place of clarity and wisdom and self-awareness and self-understanding. There's some deep self-understanding that has to be done in this situation in regards to this astrologer. Deals with the truth that you must reach, the shadows and the feelings that you must feel and move through. Of all these shadows to move through. A lot of shadows that have to be faced and have to be dealt with, that he has to courageously move through in a very, very willing way to be able to evolve and grow in this particular juncture in his life. So, turning inward, going inside of yourself. I really hope that he's doing a lot of deep self-reflection right now and really looking at, where have I gone wrong? What are my shadows? I speak all this wisdom to everybody else, to my clients, to my, whatever. But what are my shadows? What are my shadows? What do I need to look at? What do I need to heal and transform within myself? That's really the question. Now, boundaries. Saturn is the planet of boundaries. Putting up barriers and walls. Healthy barriers to communication. Now, Mars in Gemini now makes it so that we can easily speak with the need to be right and be superior and be intelligent, and we can use our words as weapons against others. We can really, really hurt others with our words, and that's what Steven did, hurting others with the gentle, elderly laugh that, in the context that it wasn't just a simple, it was just a very, very light laugh. I mean, I haven't seen the episodes, so I don't know, but I imagine that he chuckled or, laughed. But there was some delusions. There was some lack of clarity on where you are in the wrong. Lack of self-awareness on what you're saying and how your mind is not thinking straight, how your mind is not thinking in the right way, where you are saying something that is wrong and deeply hurtful. And yet you can sit and laugh about it. Now, I'm making assumptions about the podcast, of course, but I imagine this was the way it was. I haven't seen it, and I wish that I could see it, so that I could draw my own conclusions from it. But it was taken down, and probably for good reason, because, you wouldn't want anything like that up there. I think that it was for the best, because the episode had some really, really taboo, dark stuff in it, and I don't think that it was right to keep the episode up there. Of course, I would want to see it, but well, that's just my Scorpio South Node speaking. Of which, this person also has a Scorpio South Node, Taurus North Node. And that Scorpio South Node, one of the negative sides of Scorpio South Node is judgmental tendencies. Judgmental tendencies, judging others, wanting to have power over others, wanting to manipulate, wanting to be deeply powerful. And the Scorpio South Node, and really, not feel a sense of self-worth, so they have to, sort of tear others down to make themselves feel, enough. And with a Scorpio South Node, you can, you know, have patience and have acceptance for the other person. And one of the Taurus North Node lessons is self-worth, patience, acceptance, putting healthy boundaries between you and others. Taurus North Node, Taurus is ruled by Venus. And Taurus is a sign of love, stability. Scorpio is like, oh, I'm putting myself at risks. Because it feels exhilarating, it feels exciting, it makes me feel alive, it makes me feel good, it makes my adrenaline go very, very high when I put myself at risk. It feels so good to totally destroy myself and everyone around me. That is the Scorpio South Node shadow. The Taurus North Node says, be kind to yourself, be loving to yourself, be gentle to yourself, and don't act out that shadow, and be aware of when you're acting out the shadow of that Scorpio energy. You can really go against its values. And that Taurus North Node is about having strong values. So, that's also what I wanted to say there. It's about speaking from your heart and soul. Speaking what is true to you. From your heart and your soul. From your authentic self. From your spiritual self. From your higher self. From your intuitive self. Not from your ego. Not from your ego that wants to project and put others down and judge and condemn and be very, very mean and hurtful towards others, with wanting to prove others and wanting to be powerful and wanting to be superior and wanting to be, having your way, wanting to just feel important, feel special. But the soul says, be vulnerable, be honest, and be humble. Be humble and be real and raw. Be your true self, not your ego person you're trying to put on just to perform, just for the attention, just for the the applause and the recognition, all those things. Like, that's not your true self. So just do something just because you want to express it. Do something because it feels authentic to you. Do something because it feels true for me to do, and I'm just living up myself, and I'm just being myself, my true authentic self. And I'm being real, and I'm taking accountability, and I'm being vulnerable. That's the kind of self that we need to lean into, and that's the kind of self that I want to be and show you as a role model in these videos is my real self, not my ego false version of myself, but my real, true self coming out. And I want to reveal my true colors. I want you to see my true colors. I want to be liked in the eyes of others, but I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to go into my head and intellectualize it and think about and really consider all the avenues of which I can do this. But to really just feel into what feels right, what feels kind, what feels good. and embody that. I'm not going to people please and be so hyper conscious of what others are going to think of me and others are going to disapprove of me. But I'm going to come from a loving place and from a kind, good, right place in doing what I am doing and saying what I am saying. So that's what I will say there. Your ego may lack judgment. And your ego is not rooted in the most integrity and truth. Your ego is the one that judges others as separate from your own, separate from, this whole racial thing, this whole racial injustice, feeling like white supremacy, whites being superior to blacks. That's all ego. That's all ego, thinking that your race is superior to other races. And just imagine a whole race of people coming into Earth feeling like they can't take up the same amount of space and cannot be as worthy as this other group of people. That is divisive, that is callous, that is unfair, that is unjust, that is wrong. We should all be accepted and embraced for who we are, and we should all be equal. No one should be superior to anyone else. No one. No one. Every creature is equal. We should not live in a world where there is divide, and there is separation, and there is racism between this group and another group. That is not how we evolve as a human species, as a human, collectively and individually. And individually, we need to all be accountable for our own piece of the puzzle and what we are adding to the piece of a puzzle. Do we want to play a beautiful note in the symphony of life, or do we want to completely ruin the symphony of life by playing a flat, really, really nasty, not pretty and destructive note that totally stops the whole flow of the symphony and ruins it and doesn't make it as harmoniously beautiful and sound as nice and sound as beautiful, and then naturally everyone stops or whatever happens when they hear that, that wrong note. Now, granted, it does take practice to perform in a symphony, but this is just a metaphor for you contributing life. Life is a symphony, and you are the person playing the instrument, so what are you going to contribute to that whole symphony? That's what needs to be taken into account here. So, your ego may not be fully aware of who you are spiritually, who you are intuitively, who you are with your true self, with your soul self, with your higher self. The ego can be your lower self, your small self. It can also be your wounded self. I don't know what was going on in his, psychology when he was saying what he was saying, but he wasn't operating from his soul, and I don't have to be in his shoes to know that. Okay, if you act in that kind of way, where other people are going to say it, where a massive number of people are going to say it, then you are not in your ego. Or excuse me, you're not in your soul and heart energy. You are operating from the low expression of the ego. And right now, with the South Node in Leo and the North Node in Aquarius, we're experiencing all this fall of kings and leaders that were in high positions of power, celebrities that we've, looked up to. We're very, very prominent people in power that had a lot of authority, that people looked up to, that people were inspired by, and we put them on pedestals. But now they are unraveling. Now the truth is coming out. Now they are being seen for their wrongdoings, their selfish doings, and their destructive doings. And now the Northern Aquarius is for the people. We want to focus on the Aquarian age. We want to focus on groups of people coming together, making it a horizontal society, not a top-down society. And we want to make sure that we have groups of people coming together in tribe, in community, and focusing on how is myself, who I am, contributing to the community for good and for bad. How am I individually with my own characteristics, traits, and qualities that I'm embodying? How is that contributing to the all? How is that contributing to everybody? And I also read on this post that eclipse coming up on the 12th, him being a Scorpio rising, Leo is in his 10th house. So, wow, there could be a huge groundbreaking moment for him with that eclipse, because eclipses bring fated endings and fated events coming that you just don't have any control over, because the universe just takes, it has a lot of control, and, it gives those events to your table, and, on your table. And the 10th house is career and reputation. So some major change could happen, and some reinvention, and some reevaluation. Something could happen in his, career life, in his career sector, very, very close to his midheaven in Virgo. There's a sign away. Something could happen. Something could get revealed, and right now we are leading up to the eclipse. We're going up there, and things are already getting revealed. Things are already getting looked at. So we're seeing things come out. We're seeing some of the true colors come out. We're seeing the shadow sides of leaders. The South Node really, really brings out the shadow of leaders and people. And Leo brings out the shadow sides of leaders, celebrities, and all those kind of things. It's really revealing how we put them on a pedestal, and how we didn't trust our own souls, our own intuition, our own higher self, with knowing what is good for us, questioning gurus and these kind of people to determine what is true for us, what we truly believe. You can by all means challenge and question an authority figure, somebody in high position of power, if what they say does not resonate for you and does not align with your own inner teacher, with what you know to be true inside of yourself in that regard. Now, in the Aquarian age, we all need to be emotionally honest, and we all need to be accountable for our own actions and our own words. Now, the Aquarian age is not going to be this perfect age where nothing goes wrong and nobody does wrong, but if we do wrong, we have self-awareness around that, and we can look at that with honesty and sincerity and self-love and self-compassion, to be able to look at yourself, not bypassing your own shadows and blind spots, and not seeing where you need to heal and grow. But in the Aquarian age, we are seeing how we need to grow. People will probably still be doing wrong all throughout the age, but we can all be self-aware to recognize where within ourselves we have done wrong. In our own psyche, in our own habit patterns, in our own projections and judgments and arrogance and pride and entitlement and privilege and power in this case. And looking at that with honesty. And being honest with yourself is loving yourself. Being honest with being loving yourself is doing that shadow work, doing that deep work where you're integrating all your shadows, where you're choosing to look at yourself fully and honestly and truly. Not sugarcoating it, not beating around the bush, not pretending anymore, not coming up with excuses or lies for yourself, but seeing the truth for what it is and choosing to do the work to redeem yourself and to heal yourself and to evolve yourself. So this could indicate a humbling of the ego. A humbling of the ego going on right here, right now. He is, humble. This is a humbling experience for him. He was realizing how my pride, how my entitlement has really, really negatively affected other people. So then there's this need to explain yourself or over-explain yourself and justify your wrongdoings like he did in the post. But that is just covering up for the truth of what happened and the truth of what you did wrong. This is kind of a lesson to not over-explain yourself. You not try to defend your own actions, but to see yourself clearly, but to see what you've done clearly, and to face what you have done wrong, and be honest about that, and not try to, win your way, get away with it, win your way out of the situation, talk your way out of the situation, continue to make excuses for yourself, basically. So now, the Neptune transit natal moon, Neptune conjunct natal moon transit, Neptune in Aries, moon in Aries. That can be very, very impulsive, very, very temperamental, very, very angry. This can be, where there's a lot of confusing and overwhelming feelings. Probably feeling a lot of emotional overwhelm with what's going on right now. Clouded judgment, having not clear judgment. Very important not to use, and he may be feeling the need to escape right now, to go inside himself and to and to reflect, or excuse me, not reflect, but escape, do all these things, maybe whatever habit pattern he gets himself into when he does feel very, very hurt and ashamed and whatever. And I know that he feels deeply ashamed. I'm not saying that he's a bad person. He just did a really, really wrong thing, and he made a huge error of judgment. So, and I'm sure that he deeply regrets it right now, and I'm not, denying him that. But it's about not using unhealthy escapism as a means to avoid dealing with your feelings and how unpleasant and how yucky and how messy and how difficult they are to face and feel. It is about going there and facing those feelings. Now, there could be this clarification of actions, clarifying your actions and trying to tune into your intuition as best you can. But your intuition may not be the clearest to you. You may be deluded. With Neptune energy, you're in delusion. You're not seeing things clearly. You're in your head. You're in your ego. And the Sun is square Neptune in this chart. So not seeing his identity clearly. Not seeing how he presents himself clearly. And I'm going to be discussing the Sun square Neptune in the birth chart in another episode of this podcast. Sometime, maybe I'll do it this month. I don't know. But I want to get to that aspect in the natal birth chart because I find that so fascinating. It's about being grounded in reality. Being grounded in the here and the now of what is really going on in this ground reality. Not holding on to the idea that it's not a big deal to use the N-word. Because that's what he thought. It's not a big deal. I'm just using it because I'm maybe referencing something, or to a friend because we know each other. And, but what right do you have to use the N-word in a podcast in the way that you did? What gives you the right to say such a thing? That you have the privilege to use the N-word. And that we haven't moved on from using it. That we have moved on from using it, because we haven't moved on. That word brings about all that hate and all that difficulty and all that pain from all those many, many years and decades and centuries worth of injustice, harm, abuse done to people of color. So we haven't moved on. So, it's important to make everyone feel welcome and included, not excluded and separate and marginalized. It's about balancing out your intuition with what is logical and what makes common sense. With your actions. It's important to look at the bridge and the disconnect between imagination and real life. You're caught up in a fantasy of what's going on. Not to let the illusions of your words and your actions, of your beliefs, of your notions, get the better of you. And this particular astrologer is experiencing major disillusionment. And I'm going to look up disillusionment. I discussed this on the Sun Square Neptune podcast that I did back in June. Disappointment. A lot of people are feeling disillusioned by this event. Like, oh, I thought it was so good. And he was just such a, great, very, very, not that he isn't, because he's done major things in the astrology world. You've written books of all kinds of, evolutionary topics and done very, very wise and very, very, sage wisdom and all that. But there is some truth coming out, and there is some rose-colored glasses that are coming off. And it happens when you learn the truth of what's going on, you feel disillusioned. And it says here, not as good as you thought. So he is experiencing disillusionment, and we are all experiencing, for those in the astrology community, we're all experiencing disillusionment right now of what's going on. So really, really considering your own feelings versus those of others. Considering both feelings involved. Doesn't have to be either or. There is this confusion here, this lack of clarity on the impact and the gravity that your actions have caused. I'm talking to Steven here, obviously, that his actions have caused. And there is this, with it being in Aries, with Neptune being in Aries and his moon being in Aries, there is this desire here to assert yourself. Focusing on your stance in a battle over you coming with your own beliefs and your own side of the battle, your own fighting side and philosophy and role that you're taking up. It is really egoic to take others down. It's really deeply egoic to take others down and rip others, apart. And I'm not saying this person did that, but but judging and condemning and all those kind of things like that. Are we fighting based off of what's authentic and based off of integrity, or are we fighting just for dominance, power over, superiority, entitlement, privilege, and power getting the better of you? Now, the other transit, which is really, really huge going on in his chart, is Pluto right now in Aquarius is conjunct his Mars in Aquarius. So, he is a Capricorn sun, by the way. So just to sort of clarify that, Neptune in Libra, Sun square Neptune in Libra. So Pluto conjunct Mars. Now this is deeply destructive. This aspect is deeply destructive. At worst, it can really, really destroy relationships and destroy yourself and destroy others in your own life, and not becoming engrossed in conflict. not becoming too involved in conflict and getting your way, of winning, of dominating, of doing all this kind of thing, where you avoid taking a risk. You avoid taking a risk. Excuse me. You want to take a risk. This isn't the best time for him to be taking any risks, or to be fully owning up, or to say something until he has fully looked at himself fully in the mirror and healed and grown and evolved and seeing what he has done. Then he can come out and apologize. But now it's the reflection, it's the review. It's the honest look. It's the shadow work coming out. Like when I did those negative things to those teachers, like when I put that song with that teacher's face on it and the name of the teacher, and I put her picture in the video, and that caused my own, ego death, so to speak, that I had back in March. I didn't just apologize that night because I was just so emotional and distraught about it. I waited till the next day to apologize for it. And I was very, very sincere, and I was very honest, I was very accountable, and very, very vulnerable and authentic. To be authentic is to own up for your actions, to take responsibility for your actions, to take ownership of what you have done that was wrong. So in Aquarius, it could be more about intellectual arrogance. Is my interpretation of this, thinking that your ideas are better, thinking that you know better, thinking that you are superior to be able to use that inward, thinking that you are, privileged, believing that you're privileged above blacks, to be able to speak this word very, very clearly. It's very, very important not to force your racial prejudice out on others. Deeply important not to force your own prejudice and dislike and put your own judgments on another person. So it's about not fawning or manipulating others into thinking it's no big deal, trying to smooth over pleasantries just to keep the peace and avoid, to smooth over these issues instead of, but a spiritual bypassing, not looking at the shadow, not looking at the truth, not looking at what was wrong, and not doing the work to heal and really look at that with honesty and moving through that. So, not thinking, it's no big deal that you said this. So, this is feelings of anger and prejudice, and being willing to face these shadows, being willing to feel these emotions, very, very deeply. Facing your shadows. And responding to the feelings instead of reacting. That's another thing, is just having all these feelings of hate, of prejudice, all these things, but choosing to respond to all this instead of just reacting in a very, very negative way towards what has gone on. What is occurring. Really, what is going on. It is choosing to see everything with full honesty and the full perspective of, of what you're looking at. And being willing to look at these things honestly, being willing to look at your racism, of which you do have racism. And don't say you're not a racist when you did and said a racist thing, a deeply racist thing in that regard. So therefore, you're a racist. And that is really the bottom line of it. I mean, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, I'm sorry to say this, but that's really the truth of it. So don't keep covering up, don't keep, over-explaining yourself and doing whatever that covers up from really, really owning the truth of your actions. This is in your shadow, this is all for you to look at. So, we're being asked to really look at the white supremacy and the astrology community of what all the astrologers are looking at right now. So responding to these things instead of reacting, responding to these feelings is very, very important. Now, the other negative thing with this aspect is not acting impulsively and not dwelling in hatred. Not dwelling in, what was wrong and what was very, very negative and what was really, really bad and wrong to be able to say and do. So, this is about, not being aggressive or hateful in situations. Not showing aggression or hate in these kind of places and situations going on here with what you're doing, and there may be heightened anger here going on, and there may be conflicts with colleagues, people that he works with. The Forrest Astrology, something on Facebook. The desire to get your way in a situation, the desire to fully, get your way and, do what you wish, do what you want to do, even if it destroys others, if it hurts others, you will fight and get your way to the ends of the situation. And so, you may be attached to a notion, so tightly attached to this notion that it's okay to use the N-word, it's okay to say all these really, really offensive, harmful things, and you cannot let it go. Let that idea, let that belief go, and face the reality and gravity of your wrongdoings. It's important to choose to express your feelings in healthy ways. Choosing to express them in the right ways, and to not bottle them up and explode the feelings later on. But with this transit, it's very, very important with Pluto conjunct Mars, the transit of Pluto conjunct Mars, to feel these feelings and to address them, to be honest about them, to speak to them in a way, right here and right now, instead of just holding them in and bottling them up and then waiting for them to come out. At that time, waiting for the feelings to waiting for these feelings to just come out of you and they explode out of you, and then you react to them very, very negatively, and for you to get all mad and fired up and then say something impulsively that very, very destructively that you regret. Now, let me give just my final thoughts on this incident. Here's the truth that I want you to remember, Steven, and I want everyone to remember. So I'm going to talk to this astrologer now. I'm going to talk to Steven Forrest now in my own way. Don't worry, I'm not putting his picture in this video. Okay, I'm reframing from that. But I'm putting another image that, hopefully I can find an image that, resembles this, enough. So, we are living in the Aquarian age. Okay, we are living in the Aquarian age. And in the Aquarian age, everyone, and I mean everyone, accepts everybody for who they are. We accept everybody for who they are. We do not condemn, we do not judge, we do not have injustice or racial inequalities or make certain people superior to others, like people who are so rich and wealthy are superior to the ones, below, lower, or, racial, religious, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is. In the Aquarian age, we do not make certain people more superior to others. Everyone is equal. And in this world, everyone is equal. And so, don't you want to live in a world where everyone is equal? Don't you want to live in a harmonious, beautiful world where we're all one and we're all allowed to be ourselves and we're all individuals, we're all authentic to ourselves, we have our own goals and talents and abilities, and the content of our character is recognized and seen and honored? Don't you want to live in that world? Because believe me, I've heard Steven on a short, I didn't even see the whole thing of it, but talk about Pluto and Aquarius, the transformations, about the injustice and all these kind of things like that, and all these things that he was talking about, and yet he wasn't embodying it himself with what he said on this podcast. So look yourself in the mirror and practice what you preach. I think that you want to live in this world. I know that you do. I know that you want to live in the Aquarian age, and I know that you want to live in a world where everyone is respected. There is no top-down racial injustice and inequality. So be an example of that. Be a role model. Be a steward of that. And live that out. Embody that. Be the change that you want to see. If you feel so passionately about this, be the change. And do the right thing. Now, no one is, in the Aquarian age, has this very, very strong ego that they destroy others with racial injustice and prejudice. Racial injustice and prejudice does not exist in the Age of Aquarius. It has no place. It is not welcome in the Age of Aquarius. All the hate speech and all that kind of thing going on, that has no place in the Age of Aquarius. None whatsoever. Now, he is kind of going through a really, really big ego death right now. What is an ego death? Your identity. His whole identity around being an evolutionary astrologer is getting looked at and under the microscope and reevaluated and shaken up. Where you become, where you lose sense of yourself and you become one and you understand that we are all souls. We are all connected in a soul-centered way. We are all connected in a deeply loving way to each other. We are all one. We are different, but yet we're all the same. Can we just love and have empathy and accept, or sympathy and kindness, empathy and accept each other for as we are, because no one is separate, no one is better than others. We're all the same. You and me. Not you versus me. You and me, both, and not either or. Not us versus them. And the social role that you had with the ego death, the role in your identity society gets put aside and released with the ego death. So I think that an ego death would be very, very appropriate. As I said before, facing your own shadow. Think about all the stuff that you wrote about and talked about, and face it. Face that shadow. And do the work to face it. Now, if I become an astrologer, it'll probably be an evolutionary astrology or personal astrology, or, whatever branch, spiritual, astrology, whatever, something like that I get involved into, if it is evolutionary astrology, especially if it is. But in general, I will learn from what happened, and I will not have an ego to take down others. I do not have those bones in my body where I feel that it is okay to use that kind of word. I do not have that privilege and that white supremacy ingrained in me, where I feel like I am above others and supreme others, like it would be not in my nature to use the N-word or say anything offensive against blacks. Like, it's not in my nature to do that. Like, I have a very, very strong moral compass inside of me where there's a block for me doing that, where it doesn't feel right. Tapping into the loving soul, that accepts everyone as they are, because, and the thing is, if you don't feel accepted and you don't feel loving yourself, self-love, secure within yourself, worthy as you're being yourself, how can you accept to make others feel worthy, respect others, accept others, do all of that? So it's both and. You feel worthy, loved, and accepted, and therefore you give the same to others. It's reciprocal. It's back and forth. It's you are, life is a relationship. You are relating to others in that kind of way. Therefore, you respect others in that kind of way. Releasing entitlement, strong privilege, and taking full responsibility and accountability for what you've done wrong. Because I want you to do this, and I want you to step into awareness. Go watch Teal Swan. Go see, I don't know, all those people. Teal Swan is the only person that I'm thinking of right now. Go listen to what the Astro Twins were saying on their podcast if you haven't already. Do all the things. Now it's time for self-improvement and self-help and all those things like that. Now it's time to evolve, move on, be honest, be vulnerable with yourself, grow, and if you want to come out and reframe what you've done and apologize for what you've done and do all those things, then we're all waiting for you. We're all waiting in the wings for you to come out and improve and become better and do better and be a better version, a better, more Aquarian, kind, just, soulful, spiritual person that I know that you are, and that I know that you know yourself to be. Anyway, that is all that I want to say in this episode of the Cosmic Sky Podcast. It is related to astrology because I did discuss somebody's personal transits and everything like that. I am going to post this. I am going to put this through the editor and put an image to it and do all this. I hope that you enjoyed this deep dive into this issue here that's going on in the astrology community. I had to make a full official video about it to address it fully. I will see you in tomorrow's episode, which I want to talk about the Ascendant in Capricorn. I'll plan to get to that. I know I've been saying that and then not delivering on it, but I will deliver on it tomorrow. Hopefully you have found value from this and insight from this, and I hope that you will walk away with some of these same lessons that I discussed in this video also. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.